let's say, terrestrial biomass. Let's now move to the rest 70% of our area and to another fascinating field, which is aquatic biomass, and more precisely about the algae biomass. We had a presentation on this on the technological properties possibilities by Maya yesterday, so we had an introduction on that. But now now we come to the development of materials and to commercialization of the green packaging solutions. So we are looking for the solutions before we have found some in the let's say terrestrial biocomposites like celluloses, and now we will search it in the algae biomass. And with us today we have Callum O'Connell. Callum is a seaweed sourcing manager at a company called Notpla. Notpla probably means something that plastic is kind of not how to say that we are trying to replace it with something smarter, and this is exactly what company Notpla is doing. How it is doing, it's better to give the word to Callum. So, Callum, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'll just start by sharing my screen. Oh, can you see that?
Not really, not yet.
Not yet.
So yeah, this sharing function is working for you, or?
Yes, we tried it last week.
Yes.
There we go.
We're
Perfect.
safe now.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. And just to clarify, so Notpla means not plastic, so it was a good guess. And today I'm talking about the work that we are doing at Notpla around looking at alternative ways of addressing the the growing plastic issue. And just to clarify, so this was prepared by my colleague, Dr. Dan Whitaker. Unfortunately, he has moved on to an exciting new role at another company. So I've taken it over, but I'll try and cover it as best I can. So yeah, I guess just as a bit of context, we all know about plastic. It's a very versatile material and is incredibly useful across a wide range of applications. But that versatility and longevity means that it's also incredibly persistent. And as we've continued finding new and innovative ways of using it, so has the plastic proliferated, particularly in the wider ecosystem. And I'm a marine biologist by heart, by training as well. So I always throw in this image. But basically, the plastic is not just something that we see lying about. It's now we're starting to see it in within living organisms as well, like this famous paper about zooplankton ingesting microplastics, so things under 5 millimeters, really just shows like the kind of the scale and the impact that plastic has had. And this has only been developed over the past like 10, 20 years. And we're increasingly finding more information as well about the impact that it has on stuff on on babies as well, like going through the placenta. So point being, it's a very complex and pervasive topic. So one of the main areas that you find plastic pollution is in plastic packaging. So single-use packaging makes up quite a high proportion of the plastic waste that we see in the environment. And whilst it's incredibly versatile, it has this very long shelf life. So how do we turn something that we would, in the case of single-use plastic, use for a couple of minutes, then throw away, that lasts for about 400 years into something more organic, natural, that behaves in a similar way or can do the same thing, but only lasts a few weeks. So you probably would have guessed that the route that we've gone down is seaweed. So these are our two co-founders, Pierre and Rodrigo, and they started this company back in 2017, initially Skipping Rock Labs, and basically looking at alternatives that could be sustainably sourced and would mimic the properties of plastics in a single-use context that could break down. And seaweed, as they've seen, you can see this huge wall of brown seaweed behind them, was this material that they stumbled across. And this is kind of at the core of Nopla's ethos. So we want to make single-use packaging disappear. And through that, we started with a very simple like a product, well, just using a refined extract to make what we call an 𝐒𝐸𝐻, which is just like a single-use bubble that you can fill with a water or a liquid, ingest it, and then you can eat the packaging or just throw it away, and it will biodegrade very quickly. But from that, it was realized the complexity and variety of properties that seaweeds have. So we utilize both the extracts and the less refined material from the seaweed. So most of our more commercialized products, so our films, pipettes, and coatings boxes, have been derived from these macroalgal extracts that have demonstrated really good either water barrier properties or oil barrier properties that are looking to displace some of the problem items that we're seeing. So in the case of coatings for the plastic lining, that covers a takeaway box. And then pipettes is an interesting concept, but using oil as a really efficient oil barrier. And whilst extracts are very valuable, they're also incredibly expensive and also from an impact perspective, not ideal. So how do we match that with our goals of sustainable sourcing? And looking towards the byproduct aspect of it, we're looking at ways of utilizing in, sorry, our solids. So we work with extrusion and injection molding to produce rigid materials, but also with our paper, which uses the byproduct from red seaweed production. So there's an incredible variety of materials that we've been able to utilize. And just as an example of the like we look for compostability, and that's kind of the core focus. If it can't be sustainably broken down in the environment without having a negative impact on the on living organisms, then we're not doing our jobs properly. So just to give you an example, like over the course of 1 month, like a Notpla product will completely biodegrade versus like either like more traditional plastics or like bioplastic alternatives like PLA. And whilst it's good to have like this very useful resource, it also has to be sourced in a sustainable way. So this is more my background, and we utilize both red and brown seaweeds. I've got some resources at the end, which can give you more depth information about all the different types and their values and properties. But essentially, we source from across the world from a wide variety of different providers and extractors. And at the moment, a lot of it is concentrated in certain areas, such as in Southeast Asia, and particularly the south coast, the west coast of South America. However, there's been an explosion in recent years around the value of seaweed as a useful bioresource, and all the areas highlighted in red just show you the potential for the development of this industry. And getting on to the part of the talk, which I think around how you engage with rural communities. So Notpla has a relationship with this small Welsh seaweed farmer called 𝐏𝐚𝐜𝐤𝐚𝐠𝐢𝐬. So this is one of the wordy slides, which is nice. So basically, 𝐏𝐚𝐜𝐤𝐚𝐜 is a seaweed farm that is a community-owned business. So any profits generated from seaweed production or their activities go back into the local community and also the development of that operation, because a lot of seaweed farming done commercially is quite opaque. So like in terms of like the impact that it has. So this is a very good model for trying to adjust and shift the mechanisms by which seaweed cultivation is done and make it a more not impactful, not just from a sustainability perspective, but from a community perspective, because particularly in northern latitudes, a lot of the seaweed is found in these more rural communities. And by working with them and helping really develop their model, they're able to improve the well-being of the local community and also create jobs. So whilst it's mostly a volunteer-run organization, they have developed 13 new jobs as a result of this, and they are growing as well, which is fantastic. Seaweed cultivation is still very expensive and risky operation, particularly in Europe, North America, or areas that don't have an established industry. So it's working with groups like this is a very good way to help build local capacity in developing this resource. And in terms of the impact, it's all well and good to use seaweed, but what does that actually have? Making plastics from a plastic alternative in seaweed is tricky, but as we've grown and developed, we've increased the impact we have in terms of the displacement of traditional plastics that we have that would be used alternatively. So these values are slightly out of date, but over by now about 3.5 million single-use plastics have been replaced year to date, and with over 5 tons of the amount of plastic that's been displaced. And in terms of like just one product in particular, our coating, around 20 tons of CO2 equivalent has been avoided just by using that one particular application. And yeah, so part of this journey to using seaweed as a packaging solution is built by building up like resources, and we were fortunate enough to be nominated for the 𝐒𝐸𝐿 Prize, which awards companies based on their work in sustainability-led markets. So Prince William is the patron of that organization, but besides just that kind of that image, it does actually provide lots more opportunities and access to really develop our community and also tap into and raise awareness for seaweed as a useful bioresource. We are a team of about 70 people based in London. So if you're ever around, please come and visit. And we are growing. And I've spoken a lot about seaweed. So here are some resources that I think would provide like a good context. I mean, it is mostly around seaweed itself, but there's also the economics as well as the industrial aspect of seaweeds and their use as a bioplastic alternative. And that is me.
Great, Callum. So thank you for the invitation. So next time we are in London, we'll be looking for Notpla, not for some other tourist attractions. Well, it was quite impressive for me and very telling also for the rest of the whole let's say event. It's another pathway that you're using. You're utilizing, let's say, the properties of the biomass source to improve, for instance, this barrier functions, which is the problem with the packaging. So, and as you say, well, you're developing technologies that seaweed well is carrier of those properties and can be successfully built into the packaging materials. So it's that's quite impressive. Maybe just sorry, I'm monopolizing my situation here, but since you were showing two two pathways of your firm. So one is, let's say, global. You're speaking about sustainably sourced seaweed, and you have shown the globe is your harvesting place. So here how do you solve, let's say, the issue of it's quite costly, I guess, to harvest, the process, and well, first of all, to transfer the stuff, or you're using this on some alternative approach to, I don't know, processing on spot. So that's one part, and the second is more local, which is very much rooted also in the ideas of our biorural project, which you have shown in rural Wales, which is different. So it is different algae also cultivated. So it's how those two principles come together, and how do you solve this cost thing with your global, let's say, division.
Thanks for the question. So I guess it's still something we're trying to solve. I have a colleague as well who works more on the extract side, and that is our job, is to try and understand how we can mitigate costs, because at the moment we have to just accept the fact that we are working in a very globalized system, particularly for seaweed. It is concentrated in those areas, so we have to work with it. We try to, particularly as we've grown, like working very closely with partners that we've developed relationships with over many years, to truly try and understand the processes that go in, particularly with the extracts, what their impact is, and then looking at ways of how we can mitigate it. And unfortunately, because we're competing with plastics, it's a very cheap resource compared to seaweed. So we are having to focus on those regions that are probably a bit further afield compared to local ones, which, whilst they are growing, they are still more targeted towards markets that require a higher price. And because cultivation of browns, as you observed, is much more like a labor intensive, and like in terms of costs, much higher. So the end product is not compatible right now. So that's why working with and trying to develop relationships with smaller organizations, whilst they may not be cost effective in the short term, it's like you have to kind of put in that demand to create that supply, and hopefully that will bring innovation, which will help bring the costs down. And onto your set, so that goes into the second question you had. I guess that's it's like we have to think global, but just because of the way the supply chain is. But ideally, we are building that capacity, or helping to unlock that capacity in more rural areas. I hope that answered your question.